Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Caroline. We're outside in our beautiful yard today. It's just beautiful weather and I'm so glad you could join us. I've got my daughter here, Elise, with us today because we're going to be discussing tuition and going to college without student debt. And we're going to talk to you about our journey as a family on how to get our children through college without the burden of student loans, without her burden of student loans when she graduates. And we're going to talk to you about how we didn't save for college. We didn't know anything about the 529 plan. And there are many ways of getting to college without having to pay and having to have the burden of dealing with student debt, student loans when you graduate. So I'm going to introduce Elise to you, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about her journey and what we've done as a family. So before we do that, let's just put up a few numbers on the screen. So we decided to go to a state college, in-state tuition. That also helps a lot. So we chose ECU. We live in Greenville, North Carolina, and the tuition is about $7,100 a year and some change. So what we've done as a family is not added in the room and board, because once you add room and board in, you've got an additional $13,000. So that really helped cut expenses. And she's going to tell you some of the pros and cons of living at home. And the other thing that we have done is to cut the tuition in half and share that tuition for her working part-time. And she's going to tell you again the pros and cons of that. So it comes down to about $3,500 per semester, and for each of us to have about just a little under $2,000 each to share the burden. I want you to think about this. Sacrifice equals dreams. When we sacrifice, our dream all of a sudden is a reality. And without further ado, we're going to talk to Elise. Hi, Elise.
So college tuition for me is about a little under $8,000 a semester, and I'm splitting the cost with her. So it's $2,000 for me 2 times a year. Um, so I work a lot for a full-time college student. I usually take about 15 credits a semester, but I work about 25 hours a week. Um, so I have the option to either save this extra money or I can go on my trips. The reason why I work so many extra hours is so that I can go on trips over the summer and go visit family or go to some foreign country. I just spent 3 months in Japan and South Korea, and I'm really lucky I was able to do that because I'm living with my mom instead of having room and board, and that's my extra cost. And I think that it's really easy to say if you don't want student debt, then you can just live with your parents. But not everybody can do that because maybe they don't have a good college near where their parents live, or maybe you don't want to sacrifice the college experience. I made that sacrifice. Um, it's really difficult sometimes because there's a lot of things I'm giving up to live with my parents. Um, but I'm working extra and I'm living with my parents, and I'm not going to have any debt after I graduate. So I'm able to go wherever I want and take on whatever job I want, and I won't have to worry about money afterwards.
Do you want to tell the story about how you were tempted
Oh no,
to?
I'm always tempted. It's sometimes difficult to live at home. Um, at my university town, rents are really cheap in comparison to the rest of the US. So the average rent for a student place, either like having your own place or sharing with a roommate, it's usually about 500 a month. And I'm the only person I know that lives at home. So I'm always getting texts from my friends saying like, oh, there's a room available at my friend's house for 200 a month plus utilities, and I'm always so close to taking it. But personally, I have the option of either using the money that I get from working extra um,
And didn't
to,
you calculate your 200 and it wasn't just 200? You had to factor in other things.
well, my situation is such that I want to travel over the summers, and I'm able to do that because I work extra. But I have the choice between either staying in an apartment and having more freedom 9 months of the year, or traveling 3 to 4 months of the year. Um, so
You
it's difficult, but that's the sacrifice that I make. It's sometimes difficult with my studies, having to work so much. So it's not for everybody, but that's what I do.
And let's talk about your travels. So you went to Russia one semester, or one summer.
Hmm.
I think it was the year before. And this past summer, you went to Japan and South Korea.
Hmm.
So can you tell us how you managed to not only just pay the tuition and work, but how did you get 3 months? How were you able to, you know, pay for your airfare and then your cost of living while you were there for the 3 months?
Hmm. Um, so the Russia trip was, I had a lot of help with funding from my family. Um, but Japan and South Korea was a little different. That was all from me. Um,
Your workaway stuff?
yeah. So the only reason why I was able to go for such a long period of time, because hotels are so expensive, was I exchanged my services. I worked about 15 hours a week in exchange for getting a bed to stay. In Russia, I had my own room, and it was really nice. And I worked either in the mornings or the evenings for a family. And in Japan, I worked at a guest house, and I had a private bed in a dormitory, and I worked every single morning from 9 to 11, and then the rest of my time was free. And in Korea, I actually lived in a dormitory and I worked 20 hours a week, but all I had to do was speak to Korean people in English, worked at a cafe. Um, yeah,
So you got to experience life abroad for very minimal.
yeah,
I
mostly
think,
just airfare and food costs.
which was very minimal. I think your airfare was about what, $1,000 or something, and
Yeah,
then your stay was for free because you worked about 4 hours a day doing various things, and you got to meet all kinds of interesting people. And really, your only expense was just a little bit of your entertainment, and then your food, which was very minimal. So you were able to pretty much bankroll that trip.
yeah,
And those are just, living at home. We actually, as a family, chose to purchase a home across from the university. So Elise is able to go back and forth. She can spend time with her friends on her time off. And so it's worked for us. We don't have to pay the $20,000, for room and board, that kind of thing, because it just comes down to the in-state tuition. So now, Elise, can you tell us what you're getting ready to do once you graduate? In I think it's August that you're gonna plan on moving abroad.
yeah. After I graduate, I'm planning on moving to South Korea for a year's contract and teaching English. I'm on my way to being certified for that. I really love what I've done over the summer, working with all these different kinds of people. I really like teaching, so I'll be living in South Korea. I'm sure many of you know about this. Um, and it's nice because you get paid a decent salary and your rent is free and living costs, food, transportation, all that. It's really not expensive over there.
And safety.
Yeah, it's very safe. It's very safe. This might scare her a little bit, but when I was in South Korea over the summer, I frequently, at least 3 times a week, walked home alone at 4 a.m. And
Oh,
I never felt that I was in any kind of danger. People do that all the time. It was fine.
Well, I'm very proud of Elise. She's well on her way, and she wouldn't even. One other thing before we even talk about that, tell us, Elise, your goal was to get to Japan and teach, right?
Hmm.
So, what's your plan? Why are we going to South Korea as opposed to going into Japan and teaching?
Well, in South Korea, you make a little bit less money, but because your expenses are so low and you don't have a rent to pay, usually transportation expenses are minimal, etc., you can save the majority of your salary. And I'm not a big spender anyway, so I'm planning on saving most of that to fund um, the next year, which I'll be spending in Japan at a language school. So I'll be living in an apartment and I'll have the language school tuition, and it's kind
So,
of an expensive endeavor. So I'm working for a year to save most of my money and then go on to the next.
so your goal is to go into Japan after a year, immerse yourself in the language, come out as a native speaker, correct?
Yeah, as close as I can
Okay,
get.
right. And then after that, you're thinking you're going to continue to teach in Japan, and that's your ultimate goal at this point. Is that right?
Hmm.
And Elise could not even think about going and doing a full year in Japan had she not thought about some of the steps that it would take her. If she had enormous student debt, it might delay that for her. But she's well on her way, and she's going to be able to go to this Japanese language school that's going to cost close to probably $20,000 from what she tells me between her living and her tuition. But she's already got a plan, and she is going to work in South Korea and be able to save up majority of that tuition. So by the time and living expenses. So by the time she gets to Japan, she'll be able to go on and get that education, and then that'll put her in a really good position to get a good teaching job. There's different programs out there like the JET program if anyone's interested, and I'm sure if you have any other questions or that kind of thing, you can certainly leave comments below. Please subscribe to my channel so we can discuss anything else. Just if you have any questions at all, you can leave comments and we'll be happy to answer them. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.